I want to take the time to talk about the ongoing culture war, as it's sometimes referred to, and MGTOW's place within it. I want to take the time to talk about what this is all about and this very strange phenomenon that we've been dealing with now for years. Now, at the heart of all the disagreements, not necessarily between MGTOW, but in the culture war itself, I believe is, in the case of social justice warriors and people who are generally concerned with the inequality in the world, is the desire for a kind of perfection. That is, after all, what the desire for equality is, sameness. But it's not the kind of perfection we imagine. It's a perfection that seeks to have everyone perform at the same level and everyone have the same results. Now, it is true that some people distinguish between equality of outcome and equal opportunity. They think that both are valid terms. Some people think only equality, mostly libertarians. Equality of opportunity is a legitimate term or a legitimate mode of thought. I think neither exist. I think there is neither equality of opportunity nor is there equality of outcome. The idea that we all have equal opportunities is ludicrous as the idea that we have equal outcomes. After all, we all start from different places. We have different genomes, different environments, and many of us have more barriers than others, and some have fewer than others. So the idea that there is no obstacle, or in theory at least, no obstacle in place, is ludicrous. However, I do not then change my mind or flip a switch and begin to think, well, we should strive for this and we should attempt to create equal outcome because not everyone has the same opportunity. You see, my way of thinking is one that is unfortunately or fortunately born of ruthless pragmatism. We live in a world where much of this, and perhaps all of these primal concerns people have, are essentially incorrigible. To perfect the world, at least perfection in their eyes, to perfect the world is to create a world where everyone starts and ends up at the same place. How practical is this? It's simply impossible. Now, it is true that some social justice warriors are just in it for the money, but generally the mindset of people on the left, as well as social justice warriors who are sort of specialists in this regard, is that we can affect changes to things that, if you take the time to observe in the real world, are incorrigible. Individuals are different. People are different. And if we take that into account, and all the perhaps millions and maybe even billions of minuscule differences, it becomes incredibly difficult to regulate that. Now, Gerwitz has observed many times that the safer we become in our society, the more our worries and the more our fears grow. Fears of, well, lunacy in some cases. Some of you might not be familiar with something called the bamboo ceiling. I'm sure you've heard the glass ceiling. Supposedly that is the limitation imposed on women who strive for corporate positions and high pay. No, but the bamboo ceiling, and Link will be in low bar as usual, is defined as a combination of individual, cultural, and organizational factors that impede Asian Americans' career progress inside organizations. Now, this seems a bit odd considering Asian Americans are the single most successful minority group, if you wish to call them a minority group, in the United States, but they still have a bamboo ceiling, allegedly. And if you're interested, you can read up more on that. So in many ways, we've begun to collectively lose our minds. That is to say, something's been happening in the last few years, perhaps even decades. We have begun to over-focus on minutiae and just go completely overboard. Problems that were never problems have become problems. And I fear this in the long run. Society is losing its collective mind. When we pay attention to all of these things, and when we believe, incorrectly, that we can correct every deficit and every difference between each and every human being in the world. Now, of course, you can put forth the argument we should strive for this nonetheless, but at what point do you stop? Should those who, due to the whims of fortune, are successful or happen to have been born intelligent or wealthy or both, should they be punished for that? They are no more the progenitors of their own luck than people who are less fortunate. Difficult questions, but in the most pragmatic sense, I don't think it's feasible or plausible, even if this were desirable, to rearrange the world, society, and people and individuals such that everyone were the same. Now, there's a reason I'm talking about this. First and foremost, I believe that by over-focusing or diverting attention to issues that are incorrigible, we lose focus on issues that are perhaps fixable or at least improvable. There are many things that we can do, whatever our station, however low or high, whatever our gifts or fortune, we can do to improve. But instead of that, instead of focusing on those sorts of things, which tend to be much more individual than anything else, we focus on mass groups, we focus on bamboo ceilings, we focus on lunacy. The resistance to this is great. Now, we do have a group of frontline fighters, the FFFs, as I have sometimes dubbed them, the feminist first responders, who combine entertainment, sometimes with lucidity, in combating what's sometimes referred to as feminism, or extreme leftism, or whatever. And they serve a useful purpose. I've come to acknowledge this. However, they're not really doing the groundwork. They are always remaining on the surface. I ultimately believe, in my vision of MGTOW, and everyone these days has a different one, that MGTOW has been and can be doing the groundwork. We are essentially lay people who have taken it upon ourselves to understand human nature, human biology, and the environment that integrates itself with that nature and biology. I am a layperson, but for the past 4 years, I've spent tons of money, read lots of books. I've acquired knowledge on these subject matters, because it's important to me to understand what exactly is going on. You see, as MGTOW, we need to be in a position to explain things to people calmly and rationally. Why are men and women different? Why do we get different results in some cases? We're in a position now to explain these things, that is, human beings. MGTOW's role, I think, in the greater culture war is one that is indispensable, because we're not just staying on the surface. And, for that matter, we're not trying to run a PR campaign like some people, because, let's face it, if you are simply in FFF, then there will be groups of people who might be interested in what you have to say, but are not interested in digging deeper, and for that matter, would take offense at some of the things that might be said. Now, a lot of talk has been going around about terms such as evil and good, and I've already spoken on this matter. But I do want to make one final or semi-final statement on this. Using loaded terms such as good or evil to describe human phenomena, in particular human behavioral phenomena, really puts us in a bad position. I don't mean a negative light, but a bad position, because we lose objectivity. I think it's far more useful and constructive to use words such as harmful, destructive, rather than malicious, evil, and so on and so forth. And I think if we look at problems, say the human problem, interaction between the sexes, etc., and we favor more objective words and objective means of describing things, we're going to be better off for that. Now, there's more. I think this is going to be going on for a while to come. In my talk with Teal Deer, we discussed the possibility of this simply being, that is, the feminists versus the SJWs, a kind of flavor of the decade, much akin to atheism versus creationism, or theists versus atheists. But I believe this is something much greater, something that will be ongoing and extend itself well into the future. You see, what we talk about and what's at stake here is really just basic human knowledge, Questions such as, is there a human nature? Can it be understood? How do we understand it? Can we understand it and still remain objective? Now, there are some people that claim that there is no such thing as human nature, either tacitly or implicitly, and sometimes outright. But the evidence that has been brought to bear now for years tells a different tale, tells a different story. The ideas of socialization, social constructivism, etc., frankly speaking, and this is not directed to any individual, have no place in MGTOW. I'm making a definitive statement. Why? Because there is science to show that that's simply not the case. We're not blank slates. And I do plan on making a video that will explore this topic in much, much greater depth. But this ongoing tit-for-tat between FFFs and SJWs, this is just part of something greater. Indeed, you could even argue, theoretically, that the creationist versus evolutionist debate, or theist versus atheism debate, is part of something greater as well. We are fighting, collectively speaking, for the preservation of human knowledge and the ability to understand human beings in objective terms without having to kowtow to the masses and without worrying about hurting people's feelings. The future is hurtling forward, and all along this path we see blockades and an inability to communicate our ideas, and some people actively trying to prevent the dispersal and spread of these ideas. So this will go on for quite some time to come. And how do we end this? Well, I don't know if it can be ended, and I don't know if there's any finality to it. I don't think we can just wake up one day and say it's all over. But I'm rather convinced that if we want to come to some point of closure, it is only going to be done if we start examining human beings in objective terms, without specific language that's loaded, and more importantly, without deceiving ourselves. Yes, let us embrace some of the horrific aspects of our being, because we can also, at the same time, understand the positive aspects of our being. This is about something bigger. If we ever want to progress as a species, the only way we're going to do this is if we understand what we are, how we are, and where we came from. And if we spend all the time in obfuscation, we're not going to get there. In getting bogged down in minutia, in trying to correct each and every problem of the world, even when it's not really a problem, unless you are inclined to believe that people of different height, well, this is a problem. I'm only 174 centimeters. Should I start an alliance, a coalition for short people? All people under 180 centimeters make less money than people who are taller than 180 centimeters. Should I be the next victim group? You see, this is what I'm talking about. This is insanity, and no, I'm not advocating that. This is the kind of insanity we're facing. People trying to obfuscate, people who are not interested in the truth and not interested in understanding what they are. And there are many, many reasons for that, and that should be explored in a separate context. But the culture war, and MGTOW's part in it, and the bigger picture, this will be ongoing, ladies and gentlemen. This will continue for quite some time to come, and everyone will have their role, the FFFs, MGTOW, etc. But I believe that we in the MGTOW community have perhaps the most important role, because we are willing to say things that other people are not. Not to shock people, not to make things up, but to make accurate statements about human nature that may offend people, and at the same time we can say, who gives a shit? You can take it or leave it. That's all I have to say for now. More to come later. As always, take care.